Join Boise State Public Radio for a concert with blues rock guitarist and vocalist Coco Montoya at the Treefort Music Hall in Boise, February 13th, with reserved seating. A night with Coco Montoya and his band. Find details and a link for tickets at boisestatepublicradio.org.
Well, from the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. This is Idaho Matters. On Monday, the city of Boise announced $85,000 in grant funding for a second year of youth-led climate action projects. This money will give young people between the ages of 15 and 24 a chance to create their own projects to fight climate change. Last year, the fund paid for 16 projects, including installing e-bike charging stations and building new pollinator gardens. Taking action helps kids fight climate despair, says Jenny Wolf. She facilitates Boise's Youth Climate Action Council, and she'll be talking about the council at St. Luke's lecture series on climate and health next week, along with Ji-Sung Ryu, who is a student co-chair of the council, and Dr. Lori Byron. She's an instructor at Johns Hopkins on climate and health, and we're lucky enough to have all three of them joining us today to talk more about this. I'd like to welcome all of you to the program.
Thanks, Gemma.
Thank you.
Hello. Dr. Byron, let me start the conversation with you. Can you talk to us about your background in pediatrics and what seeing kids in when it comes to climate change?
Well, I believe that healthcare providers, especially pediatricians, are some of the best messengers on this topic because we are generally trusted in our society, and we see patients and families from across the political spectrum in private settings, and because we care. And we already have relationships with youth and children who are among the most affected by climate change.
And Dr. Byron, I'm curious, is climate change having an impact on kids? And if so, can you kind of give us some examples?
It absolutely having an effect, and many effects. For the physical health, we see that both air pollution and heat affects babies before they're even born because it affects the fetus. It also gets into our brain, and its research indicates that it's causing increases in various sorts of mental health disorders like attention deficit disorder and autism. But we also see the climate angst in kids. So research has shown that 85% of kids across the world are actually quite concerned about climate change and concerned about the fact that they don't see the governments and the adults working on this situation.
So, Jenny, talk to us about climate despair. Dr. Brian used that term, climate angst, but tell us what that means. And then after that, can you talk to us about how getting kids involved locally can actually help them stay positive?
Yeah, so I think to Dr. Byron's point, we hear repeatedly that youth don't think that the adults around them are doing enough to combat climate change. You're seeing a lot of them indicating that the future is really frightening. And that makes sense because climate change is this global scale problem that can be really hard to break down and feel like there are solutions that you can have impact on. So when you're able to help youth find tangible solutions that are scaled locally in their community, I think that can turn some of that despair away toward action instead. So you can build communities, you can see impact locally instead of feeling an overwhelm or an anxiety about a global problem.
And Jenny, talk to us about Boise's Youth Climate Action Council. What is it exactly?
Yeah, so the Youth Climate Action Council is a group of 10 to 13 students every year that apply. And what that group does is they partner with a different city department to learn about a topic that is impacting us locally in regards to climate. And then throughout the year, they really become experts on this topic. And then the second part of their year, they choose a local project that relates to what they're learning about and implement it locally in the community. So we're on our fourth year of the Youth Climate Action Council, and every year I'm just so impressed by the breadth of knowledge that they're able to gain and also the impact that their projects are able to have on our city.
Ji-Sung, you're a senior at Timberline High School in Boise. How did you get started working on climate projects?
Yeah, so actually my initial interest in climate action at all was thanks to the Youth Climate Action Summit that is hosted by the Youth Climate Action Council every year. And I attended the very first one in my freshman year. And going to that summit was, before going into it, I really didn't have any particular interest in, environmental conservation and climate action. But then when I went to the summit and saw these high schoolers, literally all my age across the city, come together and listen to speakers, talk to different environmental organizations, and also just talk climate action and how to implement it into their own schools. That was just an incredibly inspiring thing to not only witness, but also engage and be involved in the conversations and be involved with the different planning and change making. So that has catapulted my journey into, joining my school's environmental club or also applying to be on the Youth Climate Action Council itself. So going to the summit and just being around other young people like me who are passionate about the climate and want to do something about it has definitely gotten me involved into climate action projects today.
So, Jisung, can you talk to us a little bit about what Dr. Byron and Jenny just spoke about with this climate despair, because it's really hitting your demographic pretty heavily. And so, being a part of this council, has that given you maybe purpose and hope to know that at least your generation is trying to do something about this?
Yes, 100%. As Jenny has said, climate change is such a global, large-scale problem, and so it can feel incredibly daunting. And um, it's really easy for people in my age and my generation to feel very lost and hopeless. But working on the council and also having the support of our supervisors like Jenny, and also having city resources, the Bloomberg grant. Funding our own climate action projects has given us a lot more of a sense of control almost, where we can not only bring our own ideas and creativity to the table, but also bring them to light in some way that can help protect our environment. So whether that's in composting or starting a pollinator garden, that has definitely made the climate action or tackling the climate crisis become a much more manageable and personal
Mm.
sort of pursuit. So.
Because you're really doing things on a local level, Jisung. I mean, talk to us about a couple of the projects that you've worked on. And one of them is your environmental club at your high school worked on a reusable bag program. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so last year for April, since that is Earth Month, we partnered with Albertsons. And thanks to the Idaho Business for the Outdoors, they gave us funding to reintroduce a reusable bag discount at Albertsons. And then we ended up producing around 2,000 student designed reusable bags that we distributed at 3 different Albertsons locations for 3 weeks straight. And so the message that we were trying to spread, partnering with the city of Boise, Boise School District, and 6 other high schools across the city, we really wanted to spread the message that we can really change our kind of consumerist culture and kind of be more sustainable in our everyday shopping practices. And we really wanted to make a youth-driven statement that, this is the future that we will be inheriting. This is the world that we are going to be growing up in and, fighting for. And so we really want to kind of build and make any kind of effort we can to make this planet healthier and better for all of us. So, yeah, that project was super huge in terms of getting able to kind of assert our own student creativity, but also make a
Mhm.
positive impact on the planet.
And I know you're working on a school composting program as well, but you've also been working to raise awareness about heat mitigation planning. Can you talk to us about what that is?
Yeah, 100%. So last year I was a council member on the Youth Climate Action Council. And so the community project that we work on every year, our focus was heat mitigation. And so since Boise is one of the fastest warming cities in the US, our city is really experiencing increasingly extreme temperatures during the summer, largely driven by climate change. And so we also noticed that low-income families and vulnerable populations are the ones who are hit the hardest because of insufficient cooling systems or just access to cool spaces. So we ended up organizing a Beat the Heat event where we partnered with both city and community groups, and we did community surveys on what heat solutions they're looking for, and we also distributed over 100 heat kits that contained thermal comfort supplies in order to help for the communities here who are hit the hardest by extreme summer heat temperatures. And then we found that, the community is really looking for more tree coverage or access to cooling centers like libraries or churches, or pools, and overall just different ways to stay comfortable during the summer, especially as our city's experiencing more and more extreme temperatures.
Dr. Byron, I mean, sitting here and talking with Ji-Song and everything that she and her school club has done, but also the Climate Action Council, it is incredible to see how active these young people are. But in your work, how important is it to make sure that our youth do get involved in projects like these? I mean, Ji-Song says it's like it's finally given them, her generation a voice.
Right. Thanks for the question. And research indicates that people, especially youth involved in collective climate action, were actually less likely to have depression. Um,
Hmm.
one one thing, I do night shifts as a pediatrician, and there's rarely a night shift that goes by that I don't have a suicidal patient come into the hospital and get admitted. And frequently, when I'm asking them about their reasons for despair, the environment and climate change comes up. And so over time, not necessarily that night, but over time, I have the opportunity to talk with these kids about, about their feelings and why they feel like they feel that way, and if there's things they can do about it. And sometimes they're from really rural areas and they don't see things they can do about it. So I always ask permission, but I bring up things with the kids as suggestions of things that they can do, because we know that helps with their despair.
Jenny, you work directly with these youth and young adults on the Youth Climate Action Council. Tell us about what you've seen with these projects, and really not how it's just impacted our community, but how it's impacted these kids who are a part of this.
Yeah, something that I think is really unique about the Youth Council is that it allows our students to make connections within the community and amongst themselves. So I think in terms of magnituding the support that they feel, they get to see other adults working on climate. They get to see other students from other schools that are working on climate and see how it ripples out into the community. And then another really exciting thing that I've gotten to see is how joining the council ripples out into their life. So we heard back from a student who was involved with us their very first year of the Youth Climate Action Council, and they actually changed their college major based on the exposure they'd had to the sort of climate careers and connections that they were able to see through their experience with the council. So these rippling effects can expand out in really positive ways and help them build a future where I think they feel like they're able to impact solutions in a more tangible way.
Dr. Byron, can we talk a little bit about a court case you were involved with, Held versus the state of Montana? For folks who don't remember this case, give us a little bit of background on this.
Held versus the state of Montana was the first constitutional climate case to go to trial and win in the United States. And I was asked to be the expert medical witness because I'm a pediatrician and I live in Montana, and I'm active in this movement. And I was able to meet so many of the youth, the children and their families, and see exactly the impacts of climate change on their lives and on their health. It culminated a year and a half ago with a ruling in our favor, but it was sent to the Montana Supreme Court. And just 2 months ago, the Supreme Court upheld the decision of the lower court. And this really gave a huge amount of hope to the 16 plaintiffs in the case. It allowed them to mature into young people just like Ji-Song, who are educated on the topic, they care, and they really get involved. It was actually one of the more joyous moments of the century for climate advocates across Montana.
With that said, Dr. Bryan, what was the main argument that was made in this case?
Well, first of all, they weren't asking for money. They were asking that the state of Montana consider climate change as they permit for new industry like fossil fuel power plants and fracking and mining. And they, the kids wanted to see the state become responsible.
What's interesting to me about this case is that it really set a precedent, not just for the rest of the United States, but truly the world, in regards to the fact that now the state of Montana, as this was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, does have to make certain changes. So, Dr. Byron, with that said, what can Idaho youth take away from that case in Montana?
Well, there are a number of cases going on in multiple states across the country now. It's just that ours was the first to come to trial. And having youth, having healthcare providers, having other people that care get involved in these cases really matters. There's actually over 1,000 climate cases going on right now across the world in various stages of the process. And just, checking with people that do environmental law in the regions where you live to see what's going on. They would most likely be joyous to have a plaintiff that was a youth or that was a healthcare provider.
Jenny, the city of Boise, as I mentioned in the beginning of our conversation, just received another year of funding for the Youth Climate Action Council. Where does that money come from?
Yeah, so this is a grant that we received through Bloomberg Philanthropies. So this year we're able to offer $5,000 to up to 17 of those youth-led climate action projects.
Do you know what any of those projects might be this coming year?
Oh, I don't know what we'll receive this year, but if you're listening and if you're 15 to 24 years of age and you do have an innovative idea for building resilience or working on climate sustainability within Boise, I encourage you to apply so I can learn what those projects will be. And the application for that is available through March 7th. So if you go to cityofboise.org/climate, you'll be able to apply again if you're 15 to 24 for this round of funding.
And then, Jenny, how are the recipients chosen?
Yeah, so there is a committee of people throughout the city who review the applications, and there's a rubric. So we look through that considering the impact that'll have on our community and how the different applications align with the city of Boise's climate priorities.
So, Jisung, what are you hoping the Youth Climate Action Council will work on this year? I mean, now that you have a second year of grant money, is there anything on your radar?
As of right now, with the Youth Climate Action Council, we're working with the city's waste department to see how we can tackle the different ways that we're kind of wasteful in our consumption practices. So we've we've gone on a lot of different tours across the community, like the recycling center, landfill. We've looked at composting. And we've also explored textile waste as well. So I'm really hoping our council this year is super duper excited about how we can kind of create a community project targeting one or maybe even more of those areas. And so I'm really excited to kind of see how that unfolds. And then the Youth Climate Action Summit that I hold very dear to my heart because that is what inspired me to get involved in the first place. We're hoping to involve more youth hopefully this year. And we're actually very excited for our plenary speaker who was involved with the Montana climate case. And we're really hoping to kind of spark a new kind of conversation and dialogue about how to get more engaged with climate action among youth, and especially how that really more so uniquely relates to what makes Idaho's environment really meaningful for the community.
So, Jisung, what would you tell other kids who, might have a little bit of interest, but then again, might be on the fence about getting involved, not just with the council, but really even maybe, submitting a potential project?
Yeah, for sure. So, there's honestly so many different ways that you can get involved, big or small. I would say going to the Youth Climate Summit has always been one of the most kind of, inspiring experiences that I've ever had climate related because you can also meet other high schoolers or other youth your age while also getting to meet people who dedicate their career and professional lives to tackling the climate crisis and also hear from other youth who are doing the work and being engaged, speak about the issue. So that's another really great way to kind of get initial exposure. There's also a lot of green teams or environmental clubs at both middle and high school. So I think that is also always an amazing way to start too, because those are amazing groups of people with youth your age who are all, trying to look for different ways to make an impact. And then with your school club or environmental clubs, those are really great groups of people to also, apply to maybe get some funding and get some grant money with the Bloomberg grant to start your own project. So I would say those are some different ways to start getting involved.
And Jenny, what about adults? What kind of advice would you have for them? Because I know this is a youth climate action council. However, there may be adults who want to partner there might be, adults, frankly, who feel a responsibility to do something.
Yeah, I think I give a lot of the same advice to adults that I would with students is to look for those community actors that are already doing work that relates to something that you're passionate about, and join with them on that. And I am based out of the Watershed Education Center, which has long been a place where people can come to learn about the health of the Boise River. But on March 15th, we're reopening as the nation's first that we know of climate and water education center. And this is a great community resource to come and learn, whether you're an adult or a student, about groups within Boise that are already taking climate action, how you can get involved with those groups, and some of the work that still needs to be done in our community.
And Jenny, before I let you go, can you give us that information again on the projects and who can submit and how they do that?
Yeah, so for that Youth Climate Action Fund projects, you can go to cityofboise.org/climate. And through March 7th, the application will be open to 15 through 24-year-olds who have an idea about how to build climate resilience within our city.
I want to thank all of you so much for taking time out of your schedules to talk with us today. We've been speaking with Jenny Wolf. She facilitates Boise's Youth Climate Action Council. Ji-Song Ryu, a student co-chair of that council, and Dr. Lori Byron, an instructor at Johns Hopkins on climate and health. They will be talking at St. Luke's lecture series on climate and health. That will be on February 19th. And of course, we'll put a link to the talk on our webpage, boisestatepublicradio.org. This is the Idaho Matters podcast. I'm Gemma Gaudette.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.